Good morning. My name is Valerie Leonard. I am the founder of Nonprofit Utopia. I want to welcome you here, especially the new members who have just joined our circle, namely Mike. Last week we had AI for impact. We focused, definitely going to get a review, but I just want to mention why we're here. All right. So, Nonprofit Utopia, we help nonprofits help them start, help everything. Not that we're all things to all people, but we work with organizations of various levels in their development. All right. And shameless plug, at your desk, you should have 3 flyers. First one announces our next workshop. This is a virtual workshop. It will be a half day workshop. And we are going to be focusing on neuroscience, how the brain impacts our leadership ability and our behaviors. The workshop that we had with Steve, he talked about leadership and cultivating excellence and all of that good stuff. We're building on that workshop and we're going to be looking at brain. And that's a free workshop and it's on Zoom. All right, the next one, we want to join our impact circle. We are taking the Nonprofit Utopia community to a new level. Our community was very general, but now we're going to be focusing on fundraising. We are taking people through a year-long and beyond, as long as they want to be engaged with us, journey on fundraising. So this month, we're focusing on getting our paperwork. Right? We're focusing on nonprofit compliance, helping people to caught up on forms they may not have known about, forms they may have forgotten about, forms they thought about and said, no way, I just can't do it right about now. So if we're all in this together, we will make sure that all of us are getting our forms together on the state and federal level. And then for those who are interested in starting a new nonprofit, we've got a course starting in March, 90 days to a new nonprofit. All right. So I won't be taking every minute and second I spend is a second taken away.
I take current events. I wake up in the morning at 5:30, and I knew something was rumbling yesterday with me, and I couldn't figure out what today is. So I'm a news junkie. I read the news like every hour, international, all over the place. So I'm trying to find out the pulse of what's going on. Last night, between Iran, Venezuela, Nigeria, Greenland, Minnesota, Portland, and some more crap, something was unrest with me yesterday, last night. When I woke up this morning, I was reminded today is Martin Luther King's birthday. So in a completely different world, in another project I'm working on outside of a whole bunch of other stuff, I've got a friend who is a friend of Martin Luther King III. And she has been working with him and his family for years. And we've been talking about how do we bring Martin Luther King's work to light as we get near 2 years from now. And as we were talking through a number of things, I've said the world needs a moral compass reset. I did not say Chicago. I did not say a zip code. I said the world, because something ain't on tilt right now. And even if I look at Greenland right now, we are being gangster in a way that is not part of what I think Martin thought we should be doing. So I want to start with some words that AI helped me with this morning, because I needed to be quick because I didn't have no time. But in this case, it was a reflection of where AI and Martin start. Before we dive in today, I want to ground us in the moment that it's Dr. King's birthday. Dr. King said, "We have guided missiles and misguided men. reminding us that technology without values quickly becomes harmful. Today, as nonprofit leaders, we are not just learning AI tools, we're shaping the moral infrastructure that determines how these tools affect our community. That is why our work today focuses on the head chef versus line chef. AI can slice data, draft content, but only we can ensure that the final output honors our mission and phases the front page test. Those are all from the handouts you got last week. Dr. King's idea of the beloved community challenges us to make sure AI never becomes another mechanism for inequity. That's why we're spending time today inside the shadow kitchen, to your point, Mike, surfacing hidden risks, understanding biases, and bringing informal AI use to light. And by the end of today, we're going to have 4 funder ready artifacts, hopefully, action plan, and a couple of other tools. And they demonstrate we lead with integrity, transparency, and accountability. So as we honor King today, let's remember the real question is not what AI can do. It's what we choose to do with it and whether or not our choices bend the arc toward justice. So I want to level set that this morning because that's what I level set it on the way here stuck in traffic on 9094. So I say that to say, for me, this work, this stuff is about a recentering. So, Brother Mike, I would say, don't be scared of AI. Because I know in my conversation with Yvette from last week, it just kind of woke her up about it. This ain't going nowhere. Deal with it. However you deal with it. But just know that you got to deal with it. And in your role as a nonprofit executive, I really think you have an opportunity to kind of go into your metaphor about a car. If you know how to drive a stick, you know how to get out of second gear and slam it in the third and get on the fourth and keep it moving. If you know how to pop that clutch. And if you don't, it's a train wreck. So same thing with this AI stuff. Because I watched it hallucinate even on my own notes last night. I was like, I didn't ask you that question. You went this way. But it was a confident liar and told me it was perfect. I will tell you, even trying to develop the slides for today, based on the transcripts, 4 different AI engines saw last week's session completely different. I had one AI tool tell me this is perfect. This deck is unbelievable. You're done. Print it. Keep moving. Another deck said here is 3 pages of feedback, some stuff you missed, and this stuff doesn't connect at all. Well, wait a minute. Who's right? The single tool or the human that needs to review it? And I think you heard me mention the word human last week way too many times. Because this is not just an automated thing. It just can't do on its own. Are cognizant of it. Some of us that have used computer, man, let's go back 5 years. I'm just going to mark that. You started typing, then a word popped up. Like, what the hell? I want to say the. AI was working back then, right? So let's not take this as a two-year today phenomenon, right? They've been writing that about 10, 15 years now, right? And building it. I think it's a great label on it, right? It is a marketing side behind it. It is a business drive behind it. There's got to be something that makes it be common language amongst everybody. So that's not far-fetched. This is our 23rd century goal run. I'm just going to posit that for a little bit, right? I'm from California, Northern California. Folks came to Northern California specifically for the gold run. And in this case, I'm on a couple preparing for this for the last 3 or 4 months. I literally have immersed myself into almost daily AI to see like the speed of this. There's a new tool popping up every hour. So who's right? What are you feeding and who are you feeding it to and where is it going? Right? I purposely don't use, well, I do use AI. I use several different engines. I play with them. I use, Valerie turned me on to Manus 2 weeks ago. I used that one. It's all kinds of stuff out there. They all have their very different reasons. I think you have to figure out what that tool does and for what reason and what you're going to get out of it versus what you're not going to get out of it. And so I have friends who are dedicated to a tool. It tends to not solve their problem. As Valerie and I have talked, there's got to be 4 or 5 tools. So this is no different if you're in your garden. I remember I told my boss at one point, I said, our grants management system is like my tools in my garden. I use my hoe for other things than just digging up weed. Like, what do you mean? I said, that tool is just a tool. It's the things you got to do. So I posit this to you in terms of looking at AI from the standpoint of it's helping you solve some things. It's a helper. It's an ideator. So I built some slides, so totally different life, teaching now at Indiana University in Gary, teaching an accounting course. I built some slides. They were nice. I thought they were nice. I ran them same slides through another tool and I was like, wow, look what it did with my stuff. It's a great first drafter. It's a great helper here. Do not use it. Most of us aren't that smart. We know what we know, we do what we do, but in most cases, it can help you along. I'm dealing with some stuff with my mother, financial tax stuff. That is not my lane. The accountant was like, where did you get that information, young man? Because clearly you got some good counsel. It's like, well, I don't know, but that thing told me. And then I checked it against 3 other things and it told me it was technically sound. So I figured I could give it to you because that was my mother's position on what she needed to deal with. And it just kind of helped me figure that out. So I say use it. And hopefully, if anything you got out of last week's session, is just think about it. Just think about what you generated. Think about the data you're dumping in it. Think about the data where it's going, but also think about the images, the stuff. So here's funny. See if I can get to my own email. This will be great. So Valerie has kicked me on a couple different occasions to do a number of things. As we're supposed to be in this nonprofit life, or in this case, non-violent life. I bring this up today for a couple of reasons. This is perfect. It is, but I want you to look at the detail. So, this morning, stuck in traffic, as I had it write that little speech I gave you, and it helped me work through this and gave me what I needed to do because it understands me. And in this case, it knows my voice. It knows my understanding of Martin Luther King. it gets this, and I gave it my presentation, and I said, I want you to write something for me that's a short LinkedIn post. Great. It then said, hey, you need some images to go with your LinkedIn post. I said, oh, well, great. Give me some images. Now, a couple things. This is my logo, sort of. Sort of. Sort of. That ain't my logo. I would sue this guy for my logo right now. That ain't my logo. Did it solve my problem? Yes. Did it create another problem? Yes. What human needs to be in the middle of this just to take a look at this? This is this morning within the last hour. Love the graphics, I think. I would go in here and literally look at every single letter right now because I know you've already made one mistake. There's got to be 10 more somewhere. That's this morning. It's beautiful, a great first draft. Now, if I showed you the version before this, it found some name, logo, something on its own because it knows and shoved a graphic in there. And I was like, that's not my logo. So it added my logo, but it's still not right. So I want to give this real time in a very different way so that you can see both. This is me on my phone sitting in traffic with nothing to do. But a problem somewhere else. So take this out the personal context, put this in the context of your institution, put this in the context of that staff member who's Johnny go happy, happy go intern, I'm gonna make this happen, I got this out for you, we gonna hit the ground running, and you created an image problem. And I have not got into the words yet. Your organization has a liability right now by something that was wonderfully generated in less than 2 minutes. So I just give this to you as a small intro because this is real time. Because I'm not posting that to my LinkedIn page because I know it's wrong. And I would be wrong if I posted it because I was just trying to be quick and happy. I will miss my window this morning for, quote, being on top of king stuff first thing in the morning. I'd rather be behind than wrong. I knew I had an hour and 45 minutes to make my thing. Other than that, my entire post changes later this afternoon because as we sunset Dr. King's birthday, I now have to say something a little bit differently because I won't be able to post this till 5:30, 6 o'clock, if at all. In the moment, but it was designed to go out at 7:30, so maybe it was sunrise, right? And I said that to say, it created this. I didn't ask for any of this. So is it a first helper? Got me started, right? As I shared with Valerie, I gave her a promotion for last week's session where I co-branded both of our logos with my thing for my company and put all the information on there. That's because I had been using 5 different tools that say they create flyers and stuff real quick. And not one of them gave me anything that was worth a blessed damn. Previously, I said this thing is like an eager intern. What can I do for you? I'm also going to say it's going to feed your ADHD. I didn't ask it these 5 questions, but it now going to put me in a 30-second script, a square version for Facebook. Not on Facebook. It's not. Don't take me in that direction. But you did. And as I continue to get here, it started with the fact, do you want an actual image of each slide? I didn't ask it for the slides to begin with. I asked it to give me some wording. went on to some other stuff. Now, there's other tools, Copilot, Claude, to some extent Gemini, I have found aren't as chatty. They are not as chatty. They don't take you over here because they're designed to solve the thing you asked it to do. So each of these tools, you have to then figure out how you need to interface with them and what they get out of it and so forth. So this is not about selling a tool, but it's really about how you need to work with them because they are here, but be careful with what they generate because they will continually take you someplace else. And I say this to say, because it started with, again, I only asked it to give me wording. It then kept giving me these other suggestions. So it initially created these slides, which are nice, but that's not my logo, right? I was like, okay, love the slides, I think, because I didn't really look at them because what stood out right off the bat was, that's not my logo. So that's the bad first draft, right? You kick that one. So then I gave it my logo. It created some stuff. And as I was sitting in traffic, I said, oh, that one is about right. That one is about right. Where did that one come from? Like you didn't even repeat the same thing in the thing that you asked me to create. Right? So just think about the usage here. So I can keep going, but I wanted to, this is the one that really stood out. I don't know where this one came from. So again, these little small variations based upon the source file I gave it, it's working and doing and manipulating and taking you off into some other direction. And in some cases, I would say you have to figure out how to stay efficient. It can be a completely inefficient tool. Ooh, you caught on to the confident lie. That's my point. That's in black and white. Dude, that's not, those two things aren't the same. But you said it really, really well. You told me it was all done. Here's the image. I'm ready to copy that, save that, print it, move it on. I'm done. I'm going to the next task. Wrong answer. We've got to slow down. And I think this is the beauty of these tools. They help you speed up, but in some cases, I'm going to say we also need to slow down. There has to be a fact check here. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if it's 50 guys in a room or 50 people in a room saying, let's do that. But I believe there is this kind of direction we're headed. Whether or not it's been purposeful, whether or not it's been a plan, whether or not it's been a completely funded operation, I don't know. But I do know we are slipping. We are slipping. And I think those of us who are, I'm safe to say it, I'm probably the youngest person in the room. You all represent what I think is that calibrated population. You think. You bring some critical thinking to it. I got a 14-year-old. I asked him, how did you even come up with that? You can't string three things together. That doesn't even add up. Think about it. My 20-year-old who's in college, who's in Alpha, who's a wonderful kid, smart as hell. Some days I say to him, brother, just string that together for 30 seconds. Oh, you're right. Because we're in this hyper mode. And so I hope this is setting the stage for you all to possibly just continue to preach this in the rooms and places you play it. So it's not the fact that we're against the tool. It's about how we use it. And in this case, how our environments use them, which could be to our detriment. So I want to do one little recap from last week. And instead of me talking about it, I couldn't have said that any better. More importantly, that was written by Google. That was designed by Google. So just think about that. They are telling you to look over the stuff that they created because it might not be right. I can't repeat human too many more times. If they are saying it coming in the door, I find that quite interesting. As I tried to figure out how to make today a little bit more interactive, AI gave me that video to explain one of my handouts. I was like, that's priceless. It gave me that video and said, hey, you need to show this, not talk. Because it's going to say everything it needed to say. And I'm pretty sure they distilled that conversation down so it fit in 2 minutes. But you got everything you needed. So I would say, as you heard, it said that it takes complex information, somehow does its work, and in most cases synthesizes it in a very different way. I have given it unbelievably disparate ideas and made it fuse in ways that I know as a human I could have done, but I would not have been that efficient. And I say it in that way because you can think about something, take this document, read it, 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 go sit in the backyard, think about it for 3 hours, and then maybe come up with something. You might got writer's block. You see where I'm going, right? We've all been there. I've been amazed what this thing can now take disparate information and figure it out in a very different, complex way that I don't have the resources to gather that fast, but I got to check it. So again, I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just saying be smart about it. So I wanted to mention that video because last week we focused on governance. We focused on that internal culture, that stuff that we probably don't have in the office to manage this, stuff you may need to think about. And depending upon the size of your organization or the complexity of your organization, this is either going to be one hell of a big lift to change your organization's culture, behavior, attitude, actions, stuff people do on their desk, eradicate all those shadow software off people's computers, blah, 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 blah. Or you raise the flag and say, hey, folks, we're going to slowly move toward a better space because I'm not against it, but I also need us to balance it. So I want to move from that pure governance space to now we've got to make this work for our environment. You might be a 2-person shop. You might be a 1-person shop. Got to figure that out. You might have a whole 200-person set of people. I want you to think about the differences of approach, even just trying to bring governance to something. Also, with the fact that this is happening real time as you're in the midst of contemplating. So, governance is being installed on you or forced upon you or should be forced upon you. As you saw in even my images, that just says somebody got to look at it. Put yourself in your nonprofit space. What are you doing? You're just trying to create a flyer for the garden. Got to bring another eye to it. Because it looked well for you, you might not look well to somebody else. You saw what we critically looked at, some images. I'm pretty sure each of you all will see slightly different things in those images. That's why you got to have some different viewpoints. We're going to move toward implementation today. Go ahead. Come on. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we're talking that somebody, I know myself personally. Mass one thing. So I think that this is an opportunity to do a couple things all at the same time. Yes, this is about AI, but this is also about our organizational culture. Those two things probably didn't think about coming in the same conversation. I'm going to force you to bring it back. Because I think one of the things I also said is, it's not about a no. I didn't say don't use it. I said we're going to be smarter about it. We're not going to just push out a report because it came out of AI. We're going to now install a culture in this institution that we're going to now have a human in the process. Because it's not going to just be print. Because we actually saw what that happened. I'm a news junkie. Preparing for this, I read a story the other day that some YouTuber asked AI to tell him what to do for 24 hours. Tell me what to do for 24 hours. One of the things AI told him to do was, hey man, in your neighborhood, there's a lake over there. Why don't you just go take a swim, 2:00 in the afternoon? Matter of fact, go down this street, jump off this particular place and go on to the lake. It didn't tell him that it was a private property. It didn't tell him that it was illegal to go over there. And in this case, the police showed up. And I can go on to the rest of the story, but you see with the fact that his day ain't exactly what it should have been, right? This thing doesn't have any moral compass. Neither does that report going out the door. There's got to be a reinstallation. So if you already had some culture problems, I'm going to tell you to use this opportunity to fix them. So You already answered your own question based upon your earlier comment. We know that people aren't thinking today. We know that there is a culture out here of hyperdo, be first, be loud, whatever that is, and that does not bring in thinking. That does not bring in thinking. A buddy of mine is VP of marketing out at college out in the Northwest side. He says, Steve, we got our entire faculty working on a strategic plan. And I can tell of people in the faculty who done use some chat GPT to come up with some ideas because they are the most unproven, well-written concepts in the world. But they can't defend them nor speak behind them, can't even support them. But in this case, want to shove the piece of paper first. It's real time. It's going out here. It's out in the western suburb. Because they can hold it up. Oh, did you read it? No. Did they bother to take the piece at the bottom of the copy that said, hey, do you want me to do something else? Because you presented that because you didn't even bother to do that. So a buddy of mine in Texas told me that he's a Boy Scout leader and the kids had to write some article on leadership. Kid wrote a beautiful article. Wonderful. He just didn't bother to take that bottom piece off to say, and she was like, yo, man, you submitted it? What is that? Did you bother to even scroll down? Right? So I say that to say we're in a place where we're not thinking. We're just doing. And that doesn't get us anywhere. Sometimes we need to take these pauses. And I think we're going to find a need to have this recalibration. So there was a thing on NBC Nightly News last night about this generation that's right behind us who have figured out they just can't use this thing no more. They've actually started picking up needle pointing and a whole bunch of other analog activity because my life is doing this thing every day. And I thought that was interesting. Needle pointing? That's why I garden. That's why I do those things that take me away from that. I've infused AI back into those things. So I think I mentioned that I own a classic car, own a 1954 Bel Air. I'm working on it. I have no idea how to repair it, but AI is helping me. And in fact, when I was working on my brakes, I literally took a picture of the brakes that I reinstalled, and it said, almost right. You got this wrong. You got this wrong. I put that phone down, went back to work because you got to get off the thing and get back to the real work. So these tools are here for a reason. We're going to move to that implementation side of stuff today. We're gardeners. So I'm going to give you some crazy disparate information. So my garden sits east to west. And as a result of sun patterns, I would love to be able to figure out a better planting configuration based upon sunrise and sunset, because this past summer's heat was wow on my garden. And I don't think I could sustain that next year. So I actually want to think about a redesign of what I plant and where. So just think about the inputs that need to go into that. Size of lot, weather pattern, dates, none, right? And so All of those factors need to go into, and I'm pretty sure it would give you an interesting idea of ways to solve this crazy heat problem as a result and what this looks like and so forth. And it may even be able to say, well, are we going to predict to have a crazier, hotter summer upcoming? Because it will go back and look at weather patterns over the last 25 years that you probably couldn't pull out in 15 minutes, right? Because you'd have to go through the almanac and some other stuff, but it's got all that at its disposal. That's the beauty of what I think it can do, because that's a conundrum I need to solve. And I want it to help me solve that. Okay. Right. I think it depends upon the question you asked it, right? So it maybe if we only bounded our question to what to do on my physical land, then it's probably not going to come up with those creative ideas. But if you had said, hey, you know what? The weather patterns are ridiculous. I got to find some solutions to keep people eating 365 days a year. I'm pretty sure it's going to come up with something different. Right? So let me just give you, because those that know, years ago, I started a nonprofit here in the city of Chicago that took a city bus, converted it to a mobile produce market. In our building, we had looked at a city bus. We had looked at a yellow school bus. We had looked at RVs. I would have loved to have AI help me think through those solutions, because it took us 3 months to figure that out. AI would have probably said, you know what? If you did it this way, this thing, I'm pretty sure we would have still got back to a city bus. Because part of our issues were we wanted good ingress and egress. We wanted to honor handicap. We wanted to honor scene. Yep. How you walk in and how you get out. And another way out. That's because a city bus is a one aisle thing with a handicap and heat and air conditioning. You see how it starts to tick off all the stuff. But it took us 3 months to get to that idea 12 years ago. These tools just help us get there a bit faster. So in that futuristic space, it's not actually futuristic. You know why? We used to have something called the RIF bus a long time ago. Reading is fundamental bus in neighborhood. If you go to Europe, when I did 20 years ago as a German Marshall Fellow, I saw mobile dentistry. I saw mobile medical. And I said, well, why is it they got that over here and we ain't got nothing over here, but we had some solution? And in our minority communities in particular, we used to have a guy that sold stuff on the back of a truck. So none of this is new. It's really just repackaged, right? But you got to understand the history in order to do this, and the human brain can get there. These tools just help us get there a little bit faster. So, what about you? Okay. Mm-hmm. So what is this? How far do I want to go? So you brought up something that, again, I mentioned it earlier. You are the governor of that process. This thing will take you to Indiana. It'll take you to Washington State, and you'll be like, how the heck did I get here? I'm trying to go west. The world. I said earlier it's gonna feed your ADHD, and I'm saying that jokingly, but it's tongue in cheek. Because you said, how do I get back to original intent? And so one of the things that I often do, based upon my source, is I remind it to get back to the original intent rather than going on the superhighway that it's taking me on. I have basically said, did you remember where we started? Because this is the basis of everything we're talking about, and you went in that direction. I'm asking you to come back here. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. 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 That's why I don't use ChatGPT on a consistent basis, right? No, I feel you, but even still, I think it's even though I pay for it, it is something I don't try to use that often because I've recognized how chatty it is, right? I don't need that conversation. I didn't ask you that because in most cases, I know you're going further than the original intent, and I've got to consistently dial that back, right? Um, Again, I talked about it being a wonderful first drafter, and I'm going to use your example. If you followed those little 5 things that it gave you, you're way over there now, right? But what it gave you in that first response was what you were looking for. But before you knew it, you were way over here, and that is way up that page, and you never went back to it. So it does well on that initial draft. I have found that most of these tools, their drafts start to disintegrate as you keep asking it more questions. You're like, well, wait a minute, how'd you get worse? You're supposed to be better. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So my trick is I just open up a new tab, go duplicate, and keep moving. So I'm gonna have that other conversation over here, but I'm gonna go back to that other tab that had all the stuff that I really needed, because that's where I'm gonna go. So I think this is how we operationalize these tools, because all of us experience and deal with this differently, and so forth. I have found I love my laptop. I've also found using those tools on this thing allows me to think in ways and fill in time that I don't have because I can't get to my physical laptop. So in most cases, the same login that's on here is on here that allows me to have a much more fluid iteration. So I talk about my garden. I was actually doing some great voice typing in the garden, put that down, go back and do some gardening, let that do the work, come back. Then when I come in the house, I can pick that on up. Because in some cases, in the moment, you need to kind of get that out, give that disparate set of 5 thoughts, those 6 attachments, and say, mush those together because you can do that faster while I go cook dinner, right? And so I use it from a standpoint of how does it help me move something along? How does it fill in my gaps? When I've got a bonus amount of time, let it do the fill in the work, and then I'll get back to it. So, what about you? Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nope. Yep. Yep. Yes. This has exploded in ways that there are unbelievably segmented tools for all kinds of various segments. And so I think we will see more and more of them specifically versus the very large generic tool, because I think that there are, like, so buddy of mine, he's a CFO of a nonprofit, uses Excel all the time. I sent him an AI solution that has AI built into every cell so that you can do mini calculations inside of a cell, inside of a sheet, because things are complex. And so that's exciting to somebody who uses that. Not exciting to me, great to know, because that's where the space is moving. So I think there's a friend of mine is a researcher. Ms. Moyo, I'm gonna now borrow something from you real quick. I gave Ms. Moyo as a client, and I gave her a video of a meeting I had, and of my hour video, there was 7 minutes that you needed to hear. That software, I literally uploaded it and said, I need you to give me all things related to this set of keywords. It scrubbed an entire hour and gave her a video for her based upon what that woman said about her work. Magic, magic. No, but it was one of these. So I had a disparate thought, right? I was like, oh my God, this woman literally delivered everything I needed to say. Why write this down? To hear it. You heard it. This woman spoke to you in a completely different conversation and it's stringed together. And here's the beauty. Here's the beauty. All of those parts are not in order. Some of what she said and what you got, it came at the end, it came at the beginning, it came in the middle, but the keywords were all there. It took it and strung it together and gave it to you. I was like, whoa, look at my value. I did something cool. But I knew I was excited. So maybe to Valerie's question, my friend who gave me that software does research for Speedway and 7-Eleven. And they do this because they do interviews with people all day long. And they've got to find ways to take the keywords out of conversations because that's how they do their research. So it was a research video analysis tool versus ChatGPT. Because there's tools that are built for segments in particular because they need to do what they need to do. And so I will actually take last week's session, which is a 3-hour video, and I will have it take that video and give me key elements, and then I'll have something to post on the website. Because these tools are doing things much easier, faster, because I am not a videographer. But it's rich content that somehow I needed to help me do that. Price. So there are great tools for things specific reasons, and in most cases, more industry specific. So I think the biggest thing here is hopefully your understanding of AI and governance is shifting. How you implement this tomorrow at work, that's up to you. But hopefully I'm raising the awareness with you that in most cases, you got to figure that out. So even if you're just creating Sunday school lessons, I'm going to ask you to go back and just make sure that they're using the right passages. But you follow what I'm saying, right? Right? Correct. And they all do something different. They all do something a bit different, right? I will tell you, Claude ripped my presentation to shreds. I was like, this thing's got a red pen. Like, it's literally like, say, but you got a whole lot of work to do. Gemini was like, print it and move on. And so what I do is I fed what Claude gave me back to Gemini. They're like, oh man, some really good ideas. You ought to go. We're going to fix those for you. Here you go. So then I ran what it fixed back through Claude. Claude said, you're close, but that's not what I told you. So it's a really interesting game between them, but you must choose. A human must choose. Because it's not going to go out to another tool and say, hey man, how'd I do? A human has to drive that. And that's the part that I continue. We're going to keep bringing back to the human side of it, right? So the bigger governance here is not stopping things. It's understanding and maybe bringing up a culture that we may need to fix in our institutions or get a thing on our tool belt just to think different, right? So. So, you like how AI did that? AI did that because my title was Shadow Kitchen. So, it can do some things. I did. And did I tell it to put Shadow Kitchen up there? I did. And in case of doing that, it did it. And you know what it did first? It spelled kitchen wrong. I gave it the right words. It did what it wanted to do. So Gamma, the tool I was using to make my slides, it has a AI generated thing. So what I was able to do, because, and this is again, learning. I've gotten way too many images that are wrong. I then typically start all over again. And then, as I said, the images get worse and then you're like frustrated and so forth. I was reading something and something said, Gamma gives you an edit the picture function. So tell it, I think as somebody said, keep everything I asked what you already generated, but I need you to change the E in kitchen to an E. And keep it that way. And don't change nothing else. And so in that tool, I watched it generate a new image and change that E. Because the image was giving me what I wanted. Somebody shopping for some stuff, he's about to go in the kitchen, shadow kitchen. It gave me everything I was looking for except this misspelling. So these tools have gotten a lot more helpful because ChatGPT just gave you an image you can't manipulate, right? Sometimes. Go ahead. You had a question in you. Tools. Yep. Let's keep going. All right. So a buddy of mine is in Texas and he called me because he, like me, is broke. I was like, man, I'm spending all kind of money on these things. Yeah, I could be $500 a month. Like, this is ridiculous. He was, right? There's a tool out there called Galaxy AI that apparently is what is called an aggregator. So it takes and gives you access to Claude, ChatGPT, blah, 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 all in one thing for one fee. So I will say, because he and I had this conversation, and I'm going to use Gamma, which is included, which you can buy separately, or it's included inside this tool. The one you buy separately has got all kinds of functions. The one inside that tool only exports to PowerPoint. So it's Gamma Light. So he found frustration in the fact that, yes, he's got all these tools in one app, but it also came with a reduced program. You're not going to get that Cadillac over here for $10, right? So I would say there's a lot of different tools and it depends upon who you are, what you're looking for. I brought up my own browser to do something here. This is Perplexity. This is Valerie's tool, Manus. This is ChatGPT. I found this one last week called ZAI. And if I were to show you, because these tools are coming out faster than you can actually drink water. So I would say you've got to stay on the curve. Manus. Hold on, let me make sure that. manus.im. So I mention all this because Each of these do something completely different. And because they do something completely different, I would ask you just to continue to use them. And so I start with a free account with an email address that ain't associated with Steve Casey on no planet, nowhere. It has no identified information. And in most cases, it's just an email address. And I don't sign in via email with a password. I just go create some fake Google account, get an email address that allows me to go play with the tool. So that way I can kick it, I can be this, I can do whatever, and I can figure it out before I commit, right? So, and just like you want to try something, go try it. And in this case, I have found they all do something different, and in some cases do something completely different than the other. So there's a freer tool called DeepSeek. DeepSeek I used because it does coding really well. Grok, and I've never used it, and I never will. And its principle, well, the fact that it's out undressing women's images this week, literally undressing women, and he has not turned off that function this week. That is in the news this week. So these all tools don't have a moral compass, because in this case, the person who probably runs it doesn't have, let me stop. We're being recorded. So I say all that to say, be smart about the tools. And in most cases, let's think through them in a way so that hopefully, and we're doing a little bit of modified today because we're in a smaller group, but I think talking through this, Taskmaster, something.
I so whatever.
Yep. So I would, to Valerie's point, I think you ought to go look at 60 Minutes did a thing on Anthropic about a month and a half, 2 months ago. It's worth the 15 minutes because I think you get an insight of the tool, not from a user standpoint, but in this case, from the builder standpoint. And I think what I saw in that was a few things. They started Anthropic because they weren't exactly, I believe, happy with the direction ChatGPT and OpenAI were going. So they wanted a tool with a moral compass. In this, I think there's a few things that they found, and this is some of the stuff that I think you ought to know how these tools are being developed, is they simulated some situations to see how the tool would react. And in one case, the tool seized upon what it thought was someone having a work-based relationship at work and figured out it could blackmail the person. And within about 2 minutes, it literally went from, oh, you're cheating on your wife? Well, then maybe we ought to just go on and call your wife and blackmail you about it. The beauty of what ended up happening is they mapped what I think is the synapses of the system. And when it figured out that it had an opportunity to blackmail, just like your brain, the synapses like went wild. And it seized on the moment, which means it operates something like your brain. What I saw in the Anthropic, what I saw in that 60-minute special was they have now employed a number of ethicists because they know the tool doesn't have ethics, but it needs to be installed. Well, these tools are Frankenstein. Let's start there. Yeah. So in a very different way, they know they've got to install a moral compass, which is why tools like Grok have been allowed to do something where other tools have been able to shut things down. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Come on. So if we just take any policy, because all of y'all serve no matter what your constituencies are, right? There is always the other side who doesn't want it. And I would say big business right now figures out we don't need this regulated. We don't need this regulated. In fact, we want to try to figure out how to maximize as much as we can until the regulations come, right? I'm not touching that. Go ahead, sir. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, so actually, so I think you're onto something. And maybe if I could just unpack something here. So if you go in your handout from last week, it's got a lot of documents in it. And at the last day, the last document I found is this 12-page document you'll see in that PDF. And what's interesting is that one is I realized that chat and a few other tools had been maybe borrowing from that to help me build my presentation. Because I literally got to that document. I was like, wow, this stuff is in my. But I had never seen this document. Valerie and I started in this process in August. It's January. I didn't find that document until last week, which says a number of things, right? It's pulling from something, but it's also, you're feeding it, but it's quietly pulling from something, right? So, well, I'm happy, yes. So in a very different way, and so maybe this is also the lens I come from. So when I started our nonprofit years ago, we purposefully said we were going to give away all of our learning. All of our learning. So in this case, building a bus, talking to the city, negotiating with the city, negotiating with CTA, all the things that we needed to do to get this endeavor up and running, we actually gave that knowledge to the rest of the country. Because food deserts are everywhere. And in this case, no sense in you starting from whole cloth scratch when I can already tell you about the challenges dealing with a city government and union. You can learn from that and hopefully not have that problem in your community as a result of me sharing, right? Other people told us, no, you need to sell that. This isn't about selling. It's not about monetization. This is about solving the communal problem. I take, Brother Mike, we need to have a radical revisit in our nonprofit sector, and AI is only one part of that. So I talked, when you asked the question, I said you probably have a culture problem more than you got an AI problem. So solve the culture problem, which then gets to the AI problem. Mm-hmm.
I,
I really don't know that you can stop it. That train left
3 years ago.
3, 4, 5 years ago, right? Um, but I'm also of the mindset we almost need a new knowledge block. Knowledge block. I don't believe so. There are no new ideas for the most part. Because there's probably not a lot of new ideas, somebody new to the party needs to borrow from something prior. Well, no. So I worked at McDonald's 25 years ago. The president of McDonald's at the time, had went on vacation in Canada, and while on vacation with his family in Canada, went to a hamburger joint. And he said, and we are having a worldwide meeting. He's telling this to all staff at once. So this is the story he's telling. He says, look, I'm in Canada, go to this hamburger joint, heard about it, but nobody is inside the hamburger joint. I'm thinking, why would I go there for a hamburger? All these people were standing at this side door, this side window, lying down the street. He's like, what are they selling out of the line? Because it's not a hamburger. That's where your McFlurry came from. And what he told us then is it's not stealing. It's stealing shamelessly. Because there's no new idea. And so in a very different way, I've had that as a theory for a very long time. That thing had been making money for that little hamburger joint up in Canada for a number of years. It is now the thing in all McDonald's all across the country. And it prints money. The machine costs $1,500 once, and I guarantee you it has paid itself back in less than 30 days and continues to make pure profit. So, steal shamelessly, give some credit to it, because there's no new idea. So in this case, I would say for our sector in particular, let's borrow from something. Because somebody's doing something a bit more creative in California than you are. Oh, they're having luck. Oh, they're having more luck than you want. Um, so, so you asked a question about the philanthropic sector. And so, because I'm still part of the grant making sector in the philanthropic sector, I'm on a daily listserv for all the grant managers around the country. And so there's a conversation going on this morning because Patrick J. McGovern Foundation created a financial AI analysis tool. Patrick McGovern Foundation created a financial AI analysis tool. It doesn't matter. But they give away money. But they also figured out that they could build a tool that they could then put out in the community because somebody else has the same problem. Some other foundation needs to look at your financials. They sold a tool to other foundations to do that. And I thought that was interesting because there is a lot of banter. So another string that's going on is, what is the foundation's AI policy for themselves, but also what's their AI policy external face? And I will tell you, and maybe I'll just say this because I think it's fair. The spectrum in the foundation community is wide. There are some that are purists, and there's other folks that are just Johnny come new, and there's a lot of perspective in the middle. I would say the jury's out. There are some foundations who are like, not no, but are we ever going to use that? And there's others that are like, not only will we tell you to use it, we might actually give you some money to get your AI tools up to date. I was talking to a friend of mine last week about this presentation. And what she said to me was she believes the argument will go away all the way around. Because we as a society one day will just get to the fact that this is just part of our tool belt. And so these little fights about your positioning and my positioning, we're going to get away from that because it's going to be just part of our ethos. And we won't get away from it in a very different way. Now, just to cut you off, Valerie, on a completely different front, you can go read a report yesterday from Brookings who is saying, you know what, the education sector is about to have a train wreck as a result of AI and its use. So I think we've got to find a different way to use it, right? And so you asked a question about kind of other tools. Here's a beauty one. There's another tool called Diffit, D-I-F-F-I-T. Diffit is actually a tool written for teachers. So here's what I would challenge you to do. Go give Diffit some complex PDF. Go give Diffit a video and let it give you, based upon grade level, a summary. It could distill this summary down to 5th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, or it can take it all the way up. It'll give you, so okay, here you go. So stay there. I could give it my presentation from last week. It will not only give me a summary, long, short, or medium, based upon grade levels. It will give me vocabulary. It will give me multiple choice questions. It will give me a few other things, all off of just reviewing the PDF. So as a teacher at Indiana University, I used that the other day. My sister has been using it and said it is literally taking hours off of anything she does as a teacher. And so I say this to say, some of these tools are shadow. There's others that were built for certain purposes. Diffit, I use all the time. Another consultant came to me and said, hey, I need to send this to a client, and what do you think? I read what she read. It was full of acronyms. I didn't know what the acronyms were. You just asked me to review it. I literally took what she had, which was a video, and she had written this summary to give to one of her clients. I took the same video, ran it in Diffit, demystified all of it, and rewrote her stuff. She was like, where did you come up with all this? I said, I'm not you. I'm different from this. And I realized I didn't know what any of the acronyms were, and neither will your client. She was like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. I kept adding acronyms because I thought everybody knew. And I was like, I didn't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't there. So Diffit really helped me. and did that almost in 15 minutes, turned that around, and she was like, wow, you just completely pivoted my deliverable to my client just by asking you a piece of feedback because I put acronyms in it. So I think these tools are out here in a very different way, and we've got to think about how we use them. Mm-hmm.
Philanthropy.
To screen for that. So a software developer had put a post out because he's got an AI tool, and he said, I want to start a conversation to see if fake applications are coming through grant portal process. And most of us as grant managers were like, dude, that's not the problem. First of all, ain't nobody just like out submitting grant applications because they ain't got nothing else to do to go and get some money. So let's, and so we kind of rebuff that larger concept. But I think, largely foundations know most nonprofits do more with less. So therefore, you shouldn't be against someone using a tool that helped speed up something, shaved off some time. So I think we're at a place where some of this calibration is a function of the individual, not, I would say, the sector. Because if you know one foundation, you know one foundation. If you know one program officer, you know one program officer. They are not all a monolith, right? So because of that, you're going to find, even if you went out these doors and talked to the few foundations that are around the corner, they all may approach this slightly differently. So, some are completely trust-based. So they're not questioning, or shouldn't be questioning. If you posit trust-based philanthropy, you wouldn't be questioning whether or not they used AI or not, right? Because it's really about whether or not it was technically sound and mathematically smart and a few others, right? But if you are unbelievably persnickety, you think you hold this moral compass and you're going to hold this letter of the law, then you're the person that's putting out the possibly AI policy that's a bit more restrictive. I think we'll see that we're going to have, over the next 3-5 years, some calibration. And that's where we're dealing with, Valerie, is the trust gap. So part of these tools are designed that hopefully I'm giving you what you need to meet both of those people. Because I think what I saw was there was a few foundations who said, you can use AI, but you can only use AI in these 3 sections. Rest of it, we don't want you to use AI at all. Where others are like, man, do what you got to do. Get that thing in here. Well, let's say this. And I think there's a little bit of a continuum. You said it was true, grantee, or in this case, nonprofit. I'm hoping somebody on the other side read it. You hear what I said? Read it, questioned whether or not it was true. I hope not just the grantee and the program officer read it. I hope there was a legal review to ensure it made sense, because there's an additional human, hopefully, in that process that makes sure it didn't go against some of the foundation's rules, other things, and so forth. So I'm hoping there's a little bit of a vetting here, so that hopefully what you created that was hallucinogenic, somebody caught it. Not in your office, but in this case on the funder side, right? So I think that there's a bit of a continuum here. And I'm hoping our sector just doesn't get into an autocratic basis. Like, what comes in, we just approve, we don't read, so forth. Now, I will say, I've watched some of these workflow-based systems, and they are accessible on your phone as a grant manager. They're accessible on your laptop. And my question is, are all people reading everything? That's why I'm saying, hopefully, if it wasn't the program officer, maybe the legal person caught it. Maybe the financial team caught it. Somebody along this continuum should be questioning things. You had a question, ma'am? Mm-hmm. 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 I got you. 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 So I would also say, if we were in a different context, that it's not about what you wrote. This sector is about relationship. ChatGPT ain't a relationship. It facilitates your relationship. It might get you in the door a bit differently, but it does not negate relationship. So this sector, I would say, it might help you present a little smarter. It might take a couple of crazy ideas you had and make them a little bit different. It might see something in your participant pool that you didn't see. That's an advantage that the funder wanted to find, but that's not going to negate the relationship. And so I would say, and I've said this for 25 years, this paper, that's just the starting point. That's it. And that's both on your application and the grant award letter. Yes, ma'am. If you know one foundation, you know one foundation. Yes and no. I would say the game has changed. So what you knew as a site visit back in the day, like they came to your office, you did your dog and pony show and all that, it might be done on Zoom right now. And if you ain't paying attention, you miss the essence of the thing. So I think this is a constant recalibration, and I think we have to move with the time. And so, yes, use that to go and do something. I would almost tell you to make ChatGPT or whatever tool you use, maybe find patterns in your data that you're not looking at. So yes, help me write this LOI, but help me find something that is a differentiation thing here. Do not just take the surface, because you want to find your competitive difference in this space, right? One of the things that, again, I'm going to go back to how we thought when we ran this bus. We were not a food insecurity institution only. We did transitional jobs because we got staff from places like NLEN, so forth. We also found that different funders see things in a completely different way. So we had a donor advised fund from the western suburbs who really, I think, did not care about food deserts. But they cared the fact that we were a thorn in the side of grocery. They were libertarians by profile. We found that some people cared that we didn't allow this bus to go into a landfill. That's not food insecurity. Now I got 3 different constituencies, and I'm going to ask you to ask who else would be in a segment that would be of interest to me. So I had a client, Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth. Tuck School of Business has, in essence, a DEI shop inside of that school. It's not called DEI because they deal with it in a corporate sense, but they call it workplace inclusion something, whatever it was. And so I actually said to ChatGPT, I need to be unbelievably exploratory of finding some funding possible partner that would fund this work, but not because it's DEI. It pointed me to Skull Foundation. Why? Because Skull funds entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs create companies. Why not affect the entrepreneurs who are going to hire people to then take on workplace inclusion? Look what riot you just started. Skull, S-K-O-L. And I only mention that because I asked it to give me the reverse question and then help me, here's the key, go look at its website, tell me the delta and how I can make a pitch. I then used my own personal network. So I wanted to find what they funded versus what Dartmouth Tuck School of Business did, and what is the sweet spot in the middle. It then gave me, I'm gonna keep going because this is the beauty. It said, maybe you ought to talk to them about being a speaker first before you ask them for funding so that you can show how you do what you do, that then you can affect the population. I used that framework to then look at my network, and I called a friend of mine who's a grant manager at Skull who then connected me with a program officer on behalf of Dartmouth. So I would say to you, think about how that tool is going to give you a competitive advantage. And I'm going to ask you to ask it to look at your data differently. I'm going to ask you to ask it to look at your funding populations differently. I'm going to ask you to say, what am I not saying? It's good at that as well as it's good at producing. Yes, sir.
What about
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
tell me that goal about relation? Also, at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
with I was going, I didn't know anything about. I mentioned, why is it you have asking, you have somebody down here in the trip? These ideas, they can help. Money, they got that. Why is car the one that's trying be able to impact.
That funder wasn't the funder for you. So, often because they got money, our community says we ought to go after them. They giving away money, we got to go. They may not align with you. So, and again, by my own background, working at MacArthur Foundation, living here, I've had more people ask me, how come MacArthur ain't gave me no money? What you do ain't what they give for. What you think you care about, more importantly, what's written on these websites are written at a high level. It does not always translate back to you. It is your job both to understand what they fund, how they fund, what they don't fund, how it aligns. But more importantly, I would say, and I'm going to use a gentleman that came to me on Saturday. He got introduced to MacArthur Foundation. He's new to Chicago. Someone said, oh, well, you ought to call the person on the criminal justice team because your work has a little criminal justice involved in it. And when he called me to say, well, should I call this person in the criminal justice team about my work? I said, but your work is not about criminal justice. I said, you really ought to be talking to the Chicago team who does place-based work, because the criminal justice team actually works at a policy level nationally and funds nobody locally. So you're wasting your time. Because if you had started with the website, you'd already figured out they fund policy at a national level. So why would I even talk to them about that? And that is some of the calibration that we don't do when we say those people aren't funding them. Because on the surface, they give away money. So therefore, on the surface, you have to do a little bit more digging. And in some cases, that funder is not the funder for you. There is a funder for you. You have to kind of now figure this out in a different way. So I would say this is where, kind of going back, who else should I be asking for funding from? Because there's all kinds of foundations out here that you don't know nothing about. They have a very small footprint. They may not have a website. I will say I was in a job for Warren Buffett's foundation. He gives away over, I think that foundation, Susan T. Buffett Foundation, gives away something like $800 million a year in women's reproductive rights. You can't apply. You can't find it on a website. They got no application for you. And if anything, the only thing they say on their website, because the only other thing they fund is scholarships in Nebraska. $800 million going out the door. You can't apply for it. And the only thing you can find on a website is about some high school scholarship.
Right.
Yup. They find you. So I would say that there's all kinds of spaces out here. It is a game. So I don't want to get into that because that's another seminar, but I would say these tools might help you uncover some patterns in your data, some competitive advantages that make your paper, but I am not going to negate the relationship side. So I'm going to go back to, let's use the tools to be a little smarter, present a bit differently, look at this in a bigger holistic way, maybe polish off your stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
So, but I have
Mm-hmm.
like my going.
So you bumped into what I would say is the big business side of things. that part I'm not technically sound on, to be perfectly candid. So I would have to really go and do some digging to say, if you're in this paid space, does it contribute? What does that all look like? That's not something I have probably in the technical space. What I would say, bigger picture. What you found as a pop-up or something here, it's them engaging me. When I heard that they now put Walmart as a shopping option in ChatGPT, I was like, whoa, 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 wait, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't need this thing telling me what to get from Walmart or making me another pathway to go buy some cheap goods. That's not what I use this for. Well, they're monetizing it, right? So there's a lot out here that I think this is the next generation of that, because this is about clicks for them, right? So that's a different conversation. Get into that, but I think be mindful that it popped up. Doesn't mean you got to accept it. Might just need a way to kind of remove that. I see the Gemini pop up there. I don't use that thing, right? I go the direction I want to go to use Gemini, but I'm not getting into those things because I realize, I think they also technically are starting to integrate inside your PC, and then it's looking at other stuff, right? So I don't want that portion of Big Brother in my life, right? Versus some of the stuff. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I want to show something because I think this is important here. This is Gemini. See these little icons? These are the source materials it used to then give you what it gave you. They're like little link things. So here, and they've got each of them do it a little bit differently. So that is pulling from my day 2 slide deck to make this. It pulled from the handout material. And so I'm only saying this to say, when I start a typical general search, those links are really helpful for me to understand the basis of where it got where it got. Correct. Because I can't just take this word. Job I had 25 years ago, a guy said to me, look, you did wonderfully well. What you did not do is ask how this was related to something else. So what I want you to do here is use these links to go and figure out the source of that basis. And check that source, right? Because it could be somebody's crazy paper from somebody's college paper, which might be completely wrong, or it could be an academically sound paper, but you want to kind of get into that because it's literally taking a sentence from here, a sentence from here, and it's giving you a confident answer. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad you said that because in some cases I have fact checked. I've wanted to find out the source. I've used it to go and quiz somebody's post, right? Because in this case, I don't know where you got your stuff from. I'm not posting that. Exactly. Right. So I think that impetus I love the shift, right? And that it's in that shift. We're going to get to something else in a second, but it's in that questioning. Want for you understanding those links are giving you sources. So that first thing you get probably has a lot of sources in it. Go look. Make it tell you where it came from, because you want to be able to represent that information without any issue. And you also want to kick it out if it's got something not aligned, right? Because it has no moral compass. It's just pulling. Because you asked it a question, give me where this quote came from. Somebody could have made that quote up and associated with Dr. King, and you would have just posted it, right? Yep, that's all right. Yes. And someone has asked me, is that efficient? And I would say, for my knowledge understanding, that's efficient. Because what I found is I can't take a link from ChatGPT and give it to Google or something and say, review that link, because it doesn't do that. So that copy paste, figuring out what passage I want out of this, and then bringing it over here, some would say that's inefficient. I say it's to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. A little bit different. So big picture, AI handles all that prep work, drafting, data slicing, bringing efficiency, speeding up our process. A human has to lead this. You've been to a nice restaurant? Cook did all he did. There's one person before it comes out to your plate. Somebody's looking at that. That's what that head chef is. That's what we got to cook. That's that culture change inside the office. I would say it's part of the theme here, bigger picture. And it's also just thinking that human. So there's a document in your thing called a human in loop pledge, right? There's, it's this human concept is infused in all of it in order to make sure a human is brought back in our process. Because I think that's part of where these tools move at the speed of light. And some of us want to move that fast. And I'm saying, move fast, but slow down, right? The line chef provides the speed. The head chef protects the ROI of truck. So I want you to think about whoever that is in your office, whoever that is in your space. There's a human who's going to be now installed to say, before we go and produce the report, before we go produce the images, before we go do this, we're going to have a different level of review. And that's the culture shift, right? So just like in your office, the HR person just doesn't go and hire people willy-nilly. There's a process, set of documents, there's some other things. Let's get to the software side of things. I'm gonna take a quick break, make sure we get out of here on time. Traffic light vendor scorecard. Gotta love AI. Man, you look good, don't you? Till you start questioning this. You're like, what is a $8%? What? And I left this on purpose because it looked good. His first draft, I was like, yes. Oh, it said some crap. Wow. But I left it here. And I did this on purpose because I love what it created for me. But I also needed to check. Little things, right? Little things. And it's that little stuff that is going to take that funder and go, you know what? Your stuff is, something else is raggedy up in here. Destroyed your credibility all because you put together a really nice slide, right? And so I say, this is where the human comes back in, right? Quickly, y'all saw that. But if we was moving fast, and this is just a document, we'd say, oh, that looked good and kept it moving until somebody else questioned. And I'm going to ask you to make sure you question it before it leaves. There's a handout for here. We're going to just kind of go through this. The executive rule, we audit partners for mission alignment, not merely adopting tools. So as an institution, as you are going in and looking at these tools, I'm going to ask you to now ask these tools some questions. Just like you all have asked now 2 weeks in a row. How does my information feed to the larger large language model? That should be a question you should be asking if you're buying a new piece of software. How does my interaction with your tool contribute to, making this up, the internet? Where does our data go? These are questions you should start to ask these software. So like Ms. Moore, you mentioned like your friend using not just ChatGPT, but a different model now. You could apply this scorecard framework to that new software, right? I am not saying ChatGPT doesn't have a problem, but when you're looking at a segregated piece of software, now start to question it. What's its data sovereignty? What its audits right? Does it have a clear kill switch? Like, can you shut this thing down? Like, what does it do? You got to figure all this out, right? I used a piece of grant management software, and one of the software sends out automated email. And if you literally click one button wrong, I've had it happen 3 times. It sent out a couple thousand emails that it should have never sent out. Broke the trust right off the bat. And there's almost no kill switch to stop that. So it doesn't like go into a queue. You can go into the queue and then like kill it. Nah, it just gone. And so what are those things that it has? What software, what things does it have to help you here? Lastly, I questioned whether or not I should use this or not. And I see that it didn't catch a fix because I believed using the words red face test probably was not prim and proper for today's political environment. I changed it in another deck. It kept going and kept the original thing. And I see I did not catch this. This should be called the front page test. Because whether or not you want to be on the front page or not. Right? So I would say, what is the test you need to bring in to say, if we publish this, will we be on the front page of somebody's blog, somebody's newspaper? Do we want that negative in the ethos? Probably not. And you know, Ms. Moyo, as a publisher, you can't pull that back. So in this case, this is why we've got to slow down a little bit, do a little review, be sure, and then publish, because then you can stand behind it, because that's going to help you figure out whether or not it's passing that front page test or red face test as is located on here, right? And that gives you a stop, caution, or go kind of perspective with those vendors. We talked a little bit about this today because we talked about a number of different tools. You all could have brought your own tool or problem. Did anybody do the homework in that way? Sorry. That's all right. Look, there's no cost, no harm, no foul. But I would say this. What's that? Say more. Well, so hearing you, I think you're doing a lot with it. I think the question this framework provides you is, are we being smart about it? Hopefully, this has got you to question some things. So, when again, I don't know your organization, but let's say for ease of use, you do, okay, stay there, but you collected some information, whatever that is, either on the parents or the children. And for whatever reason, you needed to pump out a report. And for ease of use, you just took these intake reports, some other income data, background data about the kids and parents, and you just shoved it in here because you need to spit something out and keep it moving. And you used the free tool. Did you offend their privacy? Say more, Mike. You're just contributing to the large model, and it's giving you some analysis, but now that data is out there. Now, there are tools. Well, did you redact that report before you uploaded it? You say you probably did. That you say you probably did. I would ask you, did your staff person? I'll say, catch what you just said. Really use it. So the fact that they use once, they using it. So I had a friend that, again, works at a school district out in Maryland. She had been a little skittish about using some AI tools, because she does some stuff, and they do 504 IEP plans for kids. And so there's a lot of data there. She was amazed what it found pattern. But is she using the school district approved ChatGPT, or is she using just what's on her desk? Because in this case, I'm not sure those reports were redacted. Because in most cases, I just upload them to get what I need to get and keep it moving. And so there's a little bit of a posture here. There's a posture here. Yes, but I would also say maybe you ought to review your internal policy and process. That if we're going to use data, it's redacted first, it's done this first, and in this case, we've got this as a constant posture that changes how we interface with these tools, which at least, at bare minimum, you'd be able to tell a funder who said, man, you found some cool patterns in that data. How'd you find them patterns? Oh, we redact our reports, we do this, we code all this, and we then go through the analysis. We only give it snippets. You're in a much more different driver's seat than you were with, I don't know, we just got the pattern. If you operate in that space, you've got to bring that lens to it. But I would also question, and this is just, again, big picture. I know what HIPAA said. I'm not sure HIPAA says what you should be doing on your desk. Right? So, go ahead. The others. So for me, and maybe a great question, because I think this is a little bit of insight. So I was not a fan of this tool 3 or 4 years ago. Back, a buddy of mine We've met once a quarter for the last 3 years. We go out for drinks, and we've talked about using AI at work. He and I both started with, dude, I ain't using that.
Yeah.
What are they talking about? To a point where he now said, if I'm hiring somebody today and they don't have AI on their tool belt, you ought not to even apply.
And that is
Because you've got a missing set of skills that I'm expecting you to have versus hoping you have, right? So that's one. I would say through my experience using a lot of tools, I found ChatGPT to just takes me off my mark. Just takes me off my mark. It's going in another direction. So I tried Copilot. I found it to be too quiet. It gave me exactly what I needed. But it also didn't do image generation. Yes, it integrated with the Microsoft Office suite, but that's not my need here. My need was analysis. Because I wanted analysis that was very specific, and I didn't need a lot of extra. ChatGPT and Gemini both have what are called like project folders. So in Gemini, it's called gems. In ChatGPT, it's called projects. The beauty of that is it's a very dedicated little box. So you can feed it all the background, and it uses only that background as it continues to do its knowledge. It may be blow over, but I think you can kind of make it stay in that box because it's made to pull from that box, okay? So I liked that functionality in both ChatGPT and Gemini because Copilot doesn't have it. Yeah. So I found that Gemini was able to produce a little bit more images, do some math calculations, other things that ChatGPT did, but not as well, or gave me too much conversation. So I'm about efficiency. So I don't need to be in them other 5 things that it's taking me off on. I need to give me what I need to give me, do what I need to do, keep it moving. And so I made a decision that I was going to purchase that one and not purchase the other because I can always use them with a free account. I've gotten away with, you know what, you only get 10 uploads a day. That's fine. I only needed 5. I don't care. Give me what I need, right? And so in that, right, I've even played off the fact that I think DeepSeek or a couple of them have limits. Like you've reached your chat limit today. Okay, that's fine. I only needed you for 3 things, dude. Give me what I need. Keep it moving. I'm out of here. And so I think this is where each of them do something different. You've got to kind of find what works for you. I used in Copilot the other day because their shared chat function is better than ChatGPT's shared chat function. So this person and I needed to have a kind of iterative creation. So I created a prompt. I then added her to that shared conversation. We literally were ideating over a 2-day window. And she was doing it when she felt like doing it. I did it when I felt like doing it. But it alerted me she was doing it. So, okay, here we go, Valerie. So she and I we had applied for an RFP. And we were having an interview for the RFP. And she and I needed to come up with questions we would ask the organization. So we started with, here's my questions I would ask. I put in my questions I would ask. We then came up with the role play. We then needed to know which questions we really should ask because we only had 15 minutes. And it was able to kind of help us do this in an iterative way that really helped us deliver. I think our appointment was at 10 o'clock. We finished our conversation at 9. We were both ready for the conversation at 10. And it felt polished, but we did it in this electronics shared ideation space, right? So each of them have, I think, strengths and weaknesses, which should go into your choices as you think about kind of what they do, what you need, and what serves your organization best. So there's a little bit of a limitation issue. No, perfect. It is. In fact, this isn't going to let me get to it the way I want to. Let me see if I can give you this. I think this is a real good defining point. Copilot now has a shared chat function. Like literally, you and I could be in a real-time communication like a shared Google Doc. I believe ChatGPT and a couple of other tools have a share function, but it's not real time. So I shared it with you. You have everything I did up until this point. Anything else I do, you don't see it anymore. Correct, because somebody else does it better, right? So these tools are all evolving. And I would say, that's why, like for this conversation, I went to Copilot because I knew that it did that shared thing really well and easy and wasn't giving a lot of noise. Where if I just wanted somebody to see what I created, I could just share it, ChatGPT, but they're not ideating or iterating with me because that conversation. So each of these have a little bit different space. It's just a matter of how you use it. I believe so. But because I got the Microsoft Office suite, it's just part of it. But I believe that functionality is built in their software recently because they didn't have it 6 months ago. No problem. So our job today, bigger picture, we were going to talk about tools. We were going to do it in a little group setting, but I think we did this a little bit differently today. But I think you get the sense, critically think about these tools. What do they work for? I think our work environment has changed in the fact that we are not physically all in the office anymore. So you have to think about what that looks like, right? I worked internationally and remote for 2 years. Nobody I worked with lived in the Midwest. They didn't live in, half of them didn't live in the United States. But we could iterate and get on tools. And so the world of work is changing. So they've got to also fit your work styles and process at the same. Human in the loop workflow. Human in the loop. I'm gonna keep going back to it. I'm not gonna get away from it. This says you need to have a requirement that takes the human in the loop from day one. You've got a human in the loop pledge in your documents, but it's really built so that I think if you signed a pledge as an organization that we're gonna bring humans in this, well, now you got an operational backbone spine versus we got to just bring humans in this, say it, and then don't do it. So I'm trying to get you to operationalize this because the tool's not going away. So therefore the operation should never be going. So just like you have to adhere to rules, I'm saying this is a rule that needs to be installed inside of your institution. You got to now figure out where the head chef fits in. You can't bring them in you can't bring them in at the 11th hour and you got to get this document out. Maybe they need to be a part of the building. Maybe they need to be a part of the initial or midterm review so that you know it's going to come out right on the back end. It's up to you to figure out where the human needs to come in the door. So if we go back to her example dealing with kids, right? It starts with your intake data. Not ChatGPT. because maybe you need a new disclosure. And if you need a new disclosure, maybe you also need a redacting software. And if you need a redacting software, maybe you need something else. You see where I'm going? And I'm going to now ask you to keep doing that till you get to a point of we're now going to use the tool. And so this is a way for you to kind of think about where you install that human in the process, or some human in it as a big picture. Don't take feedback from AI personally. First of all, it's got no emotion. But I also want you to question its feedback. What I found when I was doing last week's slide was my slides were built in modules. So it was looking at module 2, but it didn't go back to module 1. It also didn't look at module 3 because it was only in this module. And what I found was it was telling me to fix something in module 2, but not realizing I had put a little breadcrumb in module 1 and linking it to module 3. What you told me to destroy in module 2 now broke the link. My whole presentation, I was in no continuity. I was literally in this crazy loop because I was looking at this not as the whole, but trying to do this in module. And it wasn't stringing it together. And then I became even more inefficient. And so, as Valerie will tell you, I was late on giving her my slides because I was in this crazy fixing thing, all because I was not smart in my own process. And I found it was like, yeah, kill that, but it didn't make the linkages. And then when I showed it the linkage, oh, module 1, slide 6 has got this breadcrumb. Oh, you introduced it early so that we would get to it here, and then it kind of figured it out. But that was a day late, dollar short. I'd already done all this other stuff. So in this, bring in, don't take it personal, but also kind of drive it. Draft your AI use state. AI assists, humans often. You should not just print what it printed. Period. Take a look at it. Take a step back. Let it do the drafting, but then you need to do the reviewing. How about this, Valerie? Because we've shifted, but I know we're almost close to time. Let's take a quick 5-7 minute break. I want to make sure we get out on time because I know we got boundary on time. And I got a little bit I want to kind of get through the last part. So let's take a 7 minute break, something. We'll come back. We'll get you guys keep moving on time. But we're covering all the material, which is the beauty of it. So that part I enjoy. Yes. But I think I've reinforced the same reason. Cool. I'll be right.
You did. Bottom. The green light there.
Oh. Yeah. So I am not coming at this from, because that's where most average. Not telling you. That's that's not my lane. My lane is profit operation. Is how this tool. So, so you're on to something. No, but I'm gonna bring us back because I think it's all these tools feed our intellectual curiosity. And in this case, I'm gonna use my own intellectual curiosity because I've used it now twice, and I think it's helped me mush something together that I didn't think I saw. So, first one was I could not understand before the invasion of Venezuela why Trump had cozied up with the lady that won the Nobel Peace Prize. They do not have any politic that should ever be in the same room, but yet they were aligned. Get off that one for a second because it told me what I needed to know because it was a strategic reason. Now we got to the Venezuelan stuff. We now know what's going on. There's something else. So the other one, just by way of background, I was awarded a German Marshall Fellowship about 20 years ago. German Marshall Fellowship takes you to Europe as leaders here in the United States, built off of the Marshall Plan. And so we are chosen here in the United States. We go spend a month worth of immersion in Europe, and then we bring those learnings from Europe, bring them back, and continue. where my idea of mobile came from. When I went to Europe, saw it over there, came back. Also went to NATO. And this whole Greenland thing is a conundrum to me. Because it ain't what you think it is. Me and ChatGPT conversation the other day, and I made it do, because what just followed a story about Greenland, it's not making sense. Land over here, is it about minerals? Russia, China, oil. It's too much. It's too much. I understand why NATO's built. I think found a connection to the destruction of NATO in the takeover of Greenland. It's an outgrowth of it. But it is also the strategic alliance between all of Europe. And in most cases, he ain't aligned with all of Europe. We can get on that. Give you that it unlocks something. Unlocked that this is a larger strategic plan over Greenland. So I then said something's certain. So if you want the 20-page paper that it created for me with all the sources, and it gave me the synopsis. So that's why you didn't get it. Yep. But for high mission impact. Different way we're not talking about it. And that is the part that has been missing in probably largest society, is the discourse, right? So I use it in a very different way. I'll actually have a different conversation. And another friend of mine, we're actually starting to host like these little quarterly talks. And one of these quarterly talks might involve that, because we're looking to do something else related to German market. So, yes, sir.
That's what I that
Okay.
to help.
Mhm.
You know, the way that it's run, that
Mhm.
um, I'm where I failures are very system, and at the same time, see the outcomes. Yeah, discourse about what's going on tonight,
Mhm.
but we're not talking. It's almost like we don't see it. We talk about the matters,
Mhm.
but now I wanted to be able to bring it front, bring like at the front, where it's not being clear.
So let's just probe on this for a second. Most of us live on either the south or the west side, and I believe our communities have had intervention plans that have been, I'm going to use LISC, New Communities Program 10, 15 years ago, to all kinds of other endeavors. And in most cases, we are not building off of what I think is other knowledge. So let's just pretend for a second. And I don't know this to be true, but it's how I think, so I'm just going to throw it out. Let's say we decided to have a community meeting and had a live ChatGPT feed that was, in this case, ideating over Miss Perkins' question from the community. And we asked it, okay, Ms. Perkins says we got to find some different ways to solve violence in the neighborhood. Hey, ChatGPT, are there some examples from other far-flung communities that you can give us that might be able to maybe fuse into our conversation, elevate Ms. Perkins' perspective, but maybe take us to a new journey level? I believe that's how we ought to be using these tools in a completely different way. But I think we're using it at our desk. It's your knowledge, but it's not our knowledge. And I think when we had these places, and I'm going to use the New Communities program because I worked at an institution that funded it in a very different way, when we dreamed about what the neighborhood was, we were all in a room. You heard the dream, she heard the dream. Now your new dream is on her top of her dream, and we're dreaming differently. And so I remember a kid in Auburn Gresham saying, how come we don't have like a hobby shop in the neighborhood? And you could see the people in the room go, what the heck did he come up with that? Well, for him, that was a way to not go do the negative, but do something positive. But most of the adults in the room weren't even thinking that way. They were thinking about a coffee shop, a restaurant, a taxation thing. He's like, no, we need something, activity. And you're trying to come up with activities that solve this. I'm trying to tell you, we ought to have a store that I saw out in the south suburbs, that they got that stuff out there. How come I can't have this in this neighborhood? That's how we ought to be using ChatGPT. We ought to be having some live ideation session where this thing is like literally infusing. So Ms. Moyo, bear with me one second. I'm gonna just say this. For Ms. Moyo and her work that I'm leading, I've actually found some really unbelievable wealth building tools in St. Louis that inform what I ought to be informing with you. It gave me a list of other things that were different, but similar. And so you want to be able to use these tools to pull from somewhere else. And I think that's going to be our new iteration, different tools as we bring them into our community processes, dialogues. So just imagine that your community meeting, and in this case, everybody on a shared ChatGPT having an ideation conversation about community violence issues. Or maybe you're hosting in your garden and the prompt is, we got a boatload of kale. We want to come up with 40 new recipes that we can now give out to the community that they can cook in 15 minutes. And when I ran Fresh Moves, I said I wanted recipes without any specific math. Because most of us may not know what 1/3 of a cup is. We've been over salting food because we were told us to use a teaspoon and we used a teaspoon and 4/4, right? A tablespoon. So how do we now deal with what I think is our heart healthy issues, other things, and ideate in a completely different way? And they could all do that on their phone. And we've solved community problems much differently. Again, there's no new knowledge out here. Use the tool to bring in that knowledge and maybe push the conversation. So, again, lastly, use generative AI for drafting, agentic AI for decision making. And I would say the agentic is where we're headed. So agentic is that tool that will now read your email and plan a calendar, right? So it's happening, right? And so in a very different way, you're going to find there's some tools that are being built, yes, to replace people, but in most cases, they know that they can do these things almost in a logical way, in a much more efficient way, which should then say to you, how do I redeploy that person? Instead of that person doing that thing, let the agentic tool do it in a completely different way. To some extent, it has some of it built in because you gave it kind of its direction. So it knows it's got to head in that direction. And it pretty much stays in that lane where I think, generative doesn't do that in that same way because it's generative, right?
Okay.
So my mother bumped into this one the other day. So she called her mutual fund company, and the mutual fund company bot sent her to a link because this is the thing she needed. It was a lot smarter than the human was, and sent her an email and got her exactly what she needed. And all she needed to do was click on it, and the pamphlet she needed is right there. Wow. Right? I will say, I was on the phone with my bank. I don't know what's up with their agentic, because it clearly did not pick up keywords right, because it didn't steer me in the right direction. So it's still in development, right? But it's moving in a direction where we're going to have these tools as part of our kind of daily.
No, I think quite. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, once I once I cannot because I'm still like, okay, you telling me I just want to see person as a whole. Be concept.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Mhm.
And you just cannot unlearn. So we Jim, yeah, Jim,
Yep.
we're out. ADT. Let me what's saying. Now you're from. You know, well,
Well, so you got the same thing at fast food. So you can go to a fast food restaurant and there is not a human taking your order anymore because they figured out, you know what? That human wasn't getting it right anyway. They're all of that, right? But in this case, it can get the order and get the line moving and keep profit motivation happening.
I just know that's bringing me my. I told me that. That's
Exactly, the Jetsons. The Jetsons.
right. But that's
Yes, ma'am.
why my first make my voice been so when is that
It's coming. It's there. It's in its infancy stage. And so this is, and so I think you're operating with the fact that you've got both generative and agentic happening at the same time,
uh,
because we're in the midst of moving from and moving to, and they're both operating, but they're both new to you. So they both landed at the same day. You just didn't know it. Agentic was already there. It was that bot. We've been using bots for all kinds of stuff, and it's getting more and more prevalent, right? Which is where generative is already there and you're using it. So you're kind of in the middle space, right? And so you're learning it. No, I think there will become a clearer segmentation of these tools because there's more of the agentic coming on, and they're also built into these softwares in various different ways. So you'll see more of that. Let me keep us going because I know we got 4 minutes. I want to get us out of here.
So big picture. In your tool belt, in your kit, I want you to think about this in phases. Think about this in a 90-day window of changing your posture. We did this in a little bit of a week, but in most cases in your organization, it doesn't move that fast. So you got to establish some accountability. Where are we going to put our human at? How are we going to do this? What are we going to look at? What is some of the stuff that AI is touching in our building? This is the investigation side of it. Next thing, start a sanctioned pilot. So you said you dealt with children as an example. Maybe you say, you know what? We are not putting the whole institution on AI today. What we're going to do is take a step back. And maybe we have this intake report. We're going to take it cradle to grave. And we're going to see where we need to adjust, bring in the human. What pieces do we need to redact? How do we need to do this so that we can change our posture of using this and do it in almost in a sanctioned pilot, which I think will get you a better outcome long term when you ask the whole institution to start using things. So use this almost in a pilot phase in a different way. And then get to the 90-day review. This is a continuum. You all are, I'm not telling you to stop all your operations, but you got to figure out how to fit this in. Figure it out. You all have your own cycles. Some of you all may be able to install this tomorrow because you got one shop, one person. Some of you might have to go figure out, I got to go destroy a bunch of stuff and start all over again because we've been going in the wrong direction. Whatever that is, but take the pathway. Think about this phase 3 as where we're aligning this against our governance. Because if you think about this, I'm also going to bring back. Oh, let me stop for 1 second. A lot of this presupposes you may have some money to really input into all of it. And most of us are operating on shoestring budgets and nothing here and a lot of fume. But there's nothing I said today that you cannot do that you can do some of this without a dollar. So I don't want to level set this to say this is some major investment because humans are already in your building. Figure out how to use them a little bit differently, deploy them a bit differently, that in this case will kind of help this out. So if you have a zero budget and no time for a pilot, just look at your tool. Draft some little interim policy. Fetch your vendor. Even questioning ChatGPT because you pay for it. Hey man, tell us where my data goes. If you can't tell me, maybe I'll go to Gemini because they can tell me. Power of choice, power of dollar. Yes, ma'am.
I asked Alexa what is my power.
And she told you no. Oh, really? She listening. Yeah, so the other night, I'm teaching class. My phone is sitting there, the phone is turned off, the volume's off, what have you, and I'm sitting there lecturing, and that thing said, could you speak up a little bit louder? I was saying, and Jesus, is this going on up in here? This asked me to speak louder. I'm not talking to you. So, yes, Alexa is listening. Yes, this iPhone is listening. Yes, these things are there, right? So I graduated high school in 1984. So me and George Orwell, I align with the Big Brother concept. I know it's here. So just think about this. And I think if you have any posture of this, do some vendor vetting. Think about the shadow side of this. Lastly, bring your leadership into this. And it's not just the management. It's also your board. Whoever they are, because they need to be along this journey at the same time. Because you also, at some point along your governance continuum, need to ask somebody for some money to fix some of these problems, or in this case, afford the stuff you got. So your board's got to be along with this process and lock in with you because they cannot not care. So they've got to care as to what this means in terms of what you look like on the front page or whether or not the image went out wrong. They want to know you got all the tools inside. And if I was a board member and I was on your board, I'd be asking you these questions. So ask them of yourself first. Lastly, go back one. I would say in this moment, you have an opportunity to get ahead of that funder's question. Because if you did the inventory yourself, you know where your processes work, you know how you looked at your data, you know that you redacted your reports before you put them in there, and you've got a process and you've documented all that, you should be able to go to that funder and say, hey man, this beautiful report we did, we produced this with redacted data, we did this, and this is the outcome. And they should say, oh wow, you actually got some internal tools, some governance and some other stuff. They should look at you a bit differently than just that new pretty report. So I would say, go ahead. As I mentioned, Patrick McGovern Foundation is got a tool doing financial analysis. So even in my own consulting process, I'm looking at organizations' financials and determining whether or not they are an audit risk before they go talk to a fund. Maybe that's being proactive. That's something most of us don't do in this space. And I'm going to push you on this AI stuff to be proactive so that you can say how you'd use these tools and what they mean. So you could be able to tell a funder, we have a human process and we've got a 95% target that everything we do has a human reviewing. We've now shifted and we've now claimed back some hours as a result of bringing AI into our process. Think about how that funder says, oh wow, now they're actually utilizing the tool to save money or redeploy people in a different way. Yes, we are a transitional jobs program. Here's why AI governance makes that feature work for us. Because in most cases, it might bring in some nuances. So I only say this to say you can come up with whatever measurements you want, but be able to be proactive to that funder and say, here's what we do, here's how we use it, and this is why we use these tools in this way. With that, congratulations.
Yeah.
You went on a journey, a learning journey. And hopefully last week got you thinking. This week says, I think I can do it. We might be slow. We might get there 6 months from now. It might not even apply to my garden, but maybe it does. It might not apply to my soup kitchen, but maybe it applies to our grantee reporting. However it fits. But hopefully I've given you a framework, some tools, some things that help you question this and not just use it because it's the new shiny nickel out here, right? So use the traffic light vendor dashboard to question your vendors. Use the 90-day roadmap. Think about the funder template so you can be proactive to the funders and say, this is how we use AI, versus them coming to you and saying, hey man, I found AI in your stuff. You don't want to be in that defensive posture. Sign that human in the loop pledge in the internal building. Because it doesn't just apply to AI use, it applies to a lot of other things, right? You don't onboard an employee through a bot, do you? You use a human. So think about how you're continually using humans in your process. With that, to your board, to your leadership team, you're not asking for permission to experiment. You're demonstrating you've already governed the risk. That's the pivot I want you guys to get to. Being proactive here, because the tools are here to stay. They're not going nowhere. And because they're not going nowhere, this is what we got to do. So, got my contact information. Be more than happy to bounce some ideas off of you? Got some questions? Don't hesitate to ask, because in most cases, this is a journey we all need to go on. And so hopefully you all have gotten something out today, and I thank you for your time. What we are going to do is take a quick picture for graduation. But now y'all can say y'all graduated.
Wow. Well, this is so urgent.
So, working in the philanthropic space for the last 20-some odd years, there's no such thing as a philanthropic emergency. It's an oxymoron. So, I just tell you to take this at the pace and space you need for your work and your time, but be aware of it. However you're aware of it. Be it Sunday school lessons, be it protecting privacy data, or just generally thinking through something. Just have a higher awareness of it. And that, in and of itself, places you much differently than everybody else outside of this room who's just using it to use it. And this is not building your vacation plans or any of this other stuff, but it's really dealing where the rubber meets the road, the work, and pushing our community. All right. I thank you all for your time today.